creatine is not just a muscle supplement. It might also be one of the most underrated brain supplements that we have. And no, I'm not saying that you can take one scoop of creatine and suddenly become Einstein with huge biceps. Creatine did this. But there is now real research showing that creatine can affect brain energy, mental fatigue, sleep, memory, and even your mood. So if you want to get jacked, more handsome, and smarter, then watch this video, because in this video, I want to answer one simple question. What does creatine actually do to your brain? And by the end, you will understand why this tiny powder might be helping your brain the same way it helps your muscle. So first, we need to understand what creatine actually does. Most people know creatine for muscle. You take creatine and your muscles store more creatine and phosphocreatine. Then during hard exercise, your muscle can regenerate ATP faster. And ATP is basically your cell's energy currency. Think of ATP like battery percentage on your phone. When your battery is high, everything runs smoothly. When your battery is low, the phone starts lagging, apps crash, and suddenly your iPhone 17 behaves like a Nokia from 2004. And your brain is pretty similar. Your brain is only about 2% of your body weight, but it uses a massive amount of your energy. So when your brain is under stress, if you are sleep deprived, or if you have a high level of mental fatigue, if you are depressed, or if you're just doom scrolling until 2 a.m., energy becomes a big deal. And this is where creatine becomes interesting. Creatine helps recycle ATP by donating phosphate groups through the phosphocreatine system. So in simple terms, creatine helps your cells refill their energy battery faster. And this is why it helps muscle during high intensity exercise. But your neurons also need ATP. Your brain is constantly using energy to maintain ion gradients, to fire action potentials, to recycle neurotransmitters, and basically keep you alive. So the idea is pretty simple. If creatine supports energy metabolism in muscle, could it also support energy metabolism in the brain? And the answer seems to be maybe yes, especially when the brain is under stress. Now, one of the most interesting recent studies on this looked at creatine during sleep deprivation. The study was published in Scientific Reports in 2024. And this is the study that made a lot of people go, wait, creatine does what? So the researchers took participants and sleep deprived them for 21 hours. So basically they recreated the average medical student during exam season. Then they gave them either placebo or a single high dose of creatine monohydrate. And the dose that they gave them was that for every kilogram body weight, they gave them 0.35 grams. And that is huge. Like for a 70 kilo person, that is about 24.5 grams of creatine. For someone around 90 kilo, that is over 30 grams. And just to put this in perspective, the normal daily dose most people take is around 3 to 5 grams per day. And then they tested cognitive performance during the sleep deprivation period. And what they found was that creatine improved cognitive performance and processing speed during sleep deprivation. Now, this is important. This does not mean that creatine replaces sleep. Please do not watch this video and think, you know what, I will sleep for 4 hours and take a big dose of creatine. No, it doesn't work like that. Sleep deprivation is terrible for your brain. Creatine did not delete the consequences of sleep loss. It seemed to partially protect cognitive performance and brain energy metabolism under acute sleep deprivation. So the honest takeaway is this: creatine might help your brain perform better when your brain is under energy stress. And this could mean sleep deprivation, intense cognitive work, and maybe aging, maybe depression. But the strongest thing that we can say from this study is specifically about acute sleep deprivation. And the part that makes this study extra interesting is this. Normally, when people talk about creatine, they talk about saturation. For muscle benefits, creatine usually works after you take it consistently. You either take 5 grams per day for weeks, or you do a loading phase with around 20 grams per day for 5 to 7 days, and then your muscle creatine store becomes saturated. This is why taking creatine once before the gym does not magically give you 50 kg bench press increase. Creatine is not pre-workout. It is more like upgrading your energy storage system. But the brain is different. The brain is protected by the blood-brain barrier. It does not let everything in. And this is not the same as your muscles. Your muscles be like, all right, this is creatine. This is why the 2024 study is so interesting, because it suggests that under sleep-deprived, high-energy stress condition, a single, very high dose of creatine may still produce measurable brain effects within hours. And again, this does not mean that everyone should casually take 25 to 30 grams of creatine before an exam. This is a very, very high dose, and high doses can cause stomach discomfort for some people. But scientifically, it is fascinating because it suggests creatine may work best for the brain when the brain is under metabolic pressure. And that actually makes sense. If your brain is well rested and well fed and is chilling, maybe creatine does not have that big of an effect. But if your brain is sleep deprived, stressed, and desperately trying to keep ATP levels stable, creatine may become more useful. Kind of like having a power bank. If your phone is already at 100%, your power bank is irrelevant. But if your phone is at 3%, that power bank becomes very, very valuable. Now, beyond sleep deprivation, there's also research looking at creatine and general cognition. So the honest version is this: creatine is promising for cognition. The effects probably depend on the person, the dose, and baseline creatine levels. It also depends on sleep, on age, on stress, and whether the brain is under energetic demand or not. For example, people who eat very little meat or fish may have lower dietary creatine intake. Older adults may respond differently than younger, healthy adults. And this is why some people may take creatine and say that, you know, I don't feel nothing. And that might be true. Creatine is not caffeine. You do not take it and feel something instantly. It is more low-key. Now let's talk about safety, because this is where creatine has been slandered for decades. People say that creatine destroys your kidneys. People say creatine destroys your liver. The reality is that creatine monohydrate is one of the most studied supplements in sport nutrition. The International Society of Sports Nutrition states that creatine monohydrate is effective for exercise performance and is considered safe when used appropriately, with no compelling evidence that it harms healthy kidneys or liver at recommended doses. Now, should people with kidney disease just start taking creatine without talking to a doctor? No. If you have a kidney disease or a liver disease or pregnant or have any medical condition, speak with a healthcare professional. But for healthy people, the fear that normal creatine doses destroy your kidneys is not supported by evidence. And what about hair loss? This one mostly comes from a 2009 study in rugby players where creatine supplementations was associated with increased DHT levels. And DHT is a testosterone metabolite linked to androgenic hair loss. But the study did not accurately measure hair loss, and the DHT finding has not been consistently replicated. There is also now more direct evidence against the hair loss claim. A 2025 randomized trial specifically looked at creatine and hair-related outcomes and found no evidence that creatine caused hair loss or harmed hair follicle health. So the most honest answer is creatine probably does not cause hair loss based on the current evidence. But if you're genetically designed to be bald, then I understand that people get nervous. But still, the current data does not support that creatine causes hair loss in normal people. Now, let's move on to an important question. What type of creatine should you take? Creatine monohydrate. That's it. Creatine monohydrate is the form with the most evidence, the best cost effectiveness, and the clearest safety profile. And a normal dose is usually around 3 to 5 grams per day. You do not need to load, but loading can saturate muscles faster. For brain effects, we honestly do not know the perfect dose yet. The sleep deprivation study used a very high single dose. It was 35 grams per kilogram. And a newer 2026 study tested a lower single dose of only 20 grams per kilogram during sleep deprivation and still found effects on cognitive functions, although the effect was less pronounced than the higher dose. But again, those are research settings. For everyday use, most people are still going to use 3 to 5 grams per day. And if creatine gives you stomach issues, try splitting the dose. Instead of 5 grams at once, take 2.5 grams twice per day. Also, mix it with enough water. So after researching all of this, when people ask me, what supplement should I take for my brain? My honest answer would still be sleep. Focus on your sleep. My second answer would be focus on your exercise, and then protein and micronutrients, and then I will tell you to take creatine. Your brain is an energy demanding biological organ and it needs ATP, and creatine seems to support the energy system that helps cells handle high demand. So the best way to think about it is not that creatine makes you smarter, but that creatine may help your brain maintain performance when energy demand is high. So this is the story behind what creatine actually does to your brain. That's everything. If you like the video, like, subscribe, and see you in the next one.